Well, don't get excited about all these record cold temperatures. You may be freezing, but still global warming. Globalists and the World Economic Forum are afraid you might not be panicked enough about climate change. So their lackeys in the media are reporting on deep freezes, record low temperatures, snows, but they're worried that that will disrupt their climate narrative that the world is getting hotter. So they're letting us know that cold weather doesn't mean anything. Here's one example. Look at the front page of The Guardian this week. There's this freezing winter storms threaten to break records, but then look at all these climate change articles that they put on top of that, lest you think that maybe the world is not heating up. Now, if they were honest, they would tell you that there is climate change, but no scientist has definitively proven that humans or fossil fuels or carbon emissions have caused it. That has not been proven. Anyone who tells you that it has is lying. But there is a thing called climate variability, which is the natural cycles of change in the climate. I'm going to show you just a few. The media should be including this in their stories if they were honest, but they're not. Those two things are not the same. Climate change is what they call our fault, and climate variability, which happens. We do not deserve climate alarmism without hearing all sides of this. Now, am I saying global warming is not real? Well, of course not. The world has warmed since the industrial period. This is true, but there are indications that the world may be entering a cooling phase too. And what if the media was so busy scaring us about all the heat that we were collectively then not prepared for the cold? Wouldn't that be worse? Shouldn't we hear it all? So let's look at some of the things they're not showing you. For example, are you familiar with the Atlantic multi-decadal oscillation?
Of course.
The AMO? Oh, really? Would you like to give me
Who isn't? Yeah. Sure. The Atlantic multi-decadal oscillation, that's where the ocean every 20 to 40 years varies by about a 1 degree up or down about every 40 years. Doesn't everyone know about the Atlantic oscillating?
Read my notes.
I didn't read your notes. I know this. Doesn't everyone?
Are you being sarcastic?
I am being sarcastic. I know about it, but not everyone knows about it.
Because I started talking about it this weekend because I was reading Judith
Because we were doing research on it this week. Yes, no one knows about this.
Okay.
Right? Yes, I know.
All right. Philip, does the average person know about the AMO? Do you talk about this over pool?
I know the AOC.
I've known about it for about 20 to 30 seconds, so
okay.
I don't know about anybody else.
So the cool kids are not talking about it yet. Okay, Clayton is correct. What it is a series of changes in ocean temperature that happens in about 20 to 40 year cycles, usually about 1 degree Celsius. What I'm showing you here is research from the NOAA Corps, the branch of the military that studies the ocean. They admit that this 1 degree shift has been occurring for at least the last millennium. Now, when you ask NOAA, is this a result of global warming? They say, well, studies have shown from paleoclimate proxies, which is a very imprecise science. I just want to throw that in there and we'll talk about that another day, that these oscillations have been observed instrumentally occurring for at least the last millennium. This is clearly longer than modern man has been affecting climate. So the AMO is probably a natural climate oscillation. They further say, though, that climate swings have camouflaged and exaggerated the effects by global warming. I'm not exactly sure what that means, that changes in ocean temperature are naturally occurring. We expect it, but it's been masked by climate change. How can that be? Do you understand? You understand? Like, we're getting what we expect, but it's being exacerbated or masked. But that doesn't make any sense. Anybody? No?
No. I mean, look, I can't. Their logic makes no sense because they're constantly trying to make their narrative work by omitting data points.
Right, but that makes no sense. If they're saying we expect every 20 to 40 years the ocean to get warmer and colder by a degree of 1, and we are seeing that, but probably there's climate change mixed in there. We can't prove it. We don't think, right? That's not a data point. Okay.
Right. And there's zero data to support it.
Yes, right.
Zero.
Another thing we should worry about is the increased current increase in volcanic activity, the models that the media and the World Economic Forum use to tell us about climate change are called the Coupled Model Intercomparison Project, or CMIP. I'm going to call it CMIP because that's fun. That's from the World Climate Research Program. Now, these models have a lot of variability and disagreement, but the ones that are used the most are CMIP 5 and 6. Neither of these account for solar variation. That's kind of important, right? We're talking about the sun and heat. Neither of them account for future volcanic eruptions and natural climate variability, such as the AMO. That's why scientists generally don't put a ton of confidence in these models. Politicians do. It's weird, right? Let's just isolate volcanoes for a second, okay? According to climate researcher Judith Curry, volcanoes cover about, it says the instrumental period covering the past 150 years has been relatively quiet with volcanic eruptions. Thus, it is tempting to ascribe potential volcanism in a minor role in future climate projections. However, over the past 2 millennia, there have been periods with considerably stronger volcanic activity. Clusters of strong tropical eruptions have contributed to sustained cold periods, such as the Little Ice Age. Okay, that's worth noting. A lot of volcanoes usually contributes to cooling.
Yeah.
Okay. Explosive volcanoes are omitted from scenarios from the CMIP 5 and 6 because they are unpredictable, as if everything else in the climate is predictable. Due to the direct radioactive effect of volcanic aerosol particles that reach the stratosphere, large volcanic eruptions lead to an overall decrease of global mean surface temperatures, which can extend to multi-decadal or even century timescales in the case of clusters of large volcanic eruptions. And yet, the International Panel on Climate Change, which is the United Nations group, we're going to get to them in a second, they say that it is likely that at least one large volcanic eruption will occur in the 20th century. So given this, does it matter that we see increased volcanic activity? That's an honest question that the media won't ask because it would lead to cooling. The Smithsonian Institution and the United States Geological Survey tracks volcanic activity. They provide this context about volcanic eruptions, and it's very confusing. So see the chart there clearly shows that volcanic activity has gone up in the last 100 years or so. But they say they don't see any evidence that volcanic activity is increasing, despite the chart below. They're saying, and then they say the apparent increase, look at the last highlight here, the apparent increase in activity reflects increases in populations living near volcanoes to observe them. So we just know more about it. Possibly true, right? But their tracking is trending up. And then look at this middle highlight. Readers are strongly cautioned against mistaking the record for the reality. Okay, then why are you, this is not reality? That's a weird thing to say, right? They're telling us they've measured this more volcanic activity, but that's not reality.
Don't look at the record. We're showing you the data points. I don't know why we're showing them to you. It's just a record, but don't use it as reality. Listen to our fake reality that we're about to paint for you.
Yeah.
That's
strange,
how I read it.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. But we have had at least 2 major volcanic eruptions this week that we should be asking scientists about. Is this indicative of increased volcanic activity? Maybe could lead to cooling in these regions. Ask the question.
Well, we already have the data. I mean, again, a fantastic book on this, The Year Without Summer from 1816, highlights the volcanic eruptions of Mount Tambora in Indonesia. And for the next 2 years, we saw dramatic shifts in climate and cooling as a result of the volcano in Indonesia. I mean, you had founding fathers writing about it in their diaries in North America, in the United States of America, about you had snow in the middle of summer across the United States at the time. People were saying we don't have crops. Corn all the way up through New England was not even growing. And it was a terrible, there was really concerns about famine. There was famine, actually. So we have the data points, and we know this then later, about 60 years later.
What we know is that increased volcanic activity leads to global cooling. What we don't know is, will scientists then surmise that maybe this could happen to us? Well, you say maybe. They won't even say it because they're so worried about the globalists coming down on them as climate deniers.
Well, I don't understand why they won't say it. We have, I mean, it was speculated about in 1816.
No, it's not whether or not volcanic activity causes cooling. That's true.
Right.
It's whether or not it's happening now.
Oh, I see. Right. Despite the fact that, these massive volcanoes in Iceland and Japan.
Well, here's one in Iceland. How do you say this? Grimsvötn? This is, you see it written
Grimsvötn.
here? Grimsvötn. Volcanic activity in Iceland. Here's another one in Japan that formed a whole new island. That's fun to watch. I could watch that all day.
Oh, and this is great because anytime they form a new island in Japan, the United States then comes in and builds a military base on it. So the the Pentagon has got to be excited about this.
Maybe we built it ourselves.
Right.
Damn it, because I was gonna reach out to Japan and buy it, and I was gonna live there, but I guess
No, the
military
Pentagon
base makes more sense.
Yeah, the Pentagon will beat you to it. As soon as Japan gets a new island, the Pentagon is there.
All right. So can we ask questions about how these things will affect global temperatures?
No.
Can we get honest answers?
No.
Not if the IPCC, the UN body, the United Nations body, has anything to say about it, because they are politicians, not scientists. Here is Dr. Willie Soon explaining this on Tucker Carlson. He is a Malaysian astrophysicist that has been studying climate for decades.
My view is that the UN IPCC, United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, is one of the primary problems, which means they have been misleading people. They've been using authority of science, which is not true, right? It's all governmental hackers, basically, right? People like John Kerry, who I guess can barely take a proper physics class, who keep claiming that greenhouse effect is so simple, right? And then he refused to explain how does it work, right? I mean, he did all of that is very terrible, that really embarrassing to America.
Really embarrassing to America.
Very embarrassing. And then when John Kerry's daughter also shows up at the World Economic Forum and can't answer questions, that's even doubly embarrassing for America.
We're going to get to her. Now, because of his research that says that there can be natural explanations for climate variability, they accuse him of being funded by the fossil fuel industry. Here's the New York Times from 2015, accusing him of having doubtful origins of his funding. They have not, however, refuted his work. They're only attacking him. They're questioning his funding. Now, when globalists are asked to refute the fact that there can be natural explanations for climate variability, they just repeat alarmism and say, well, we'll have that data later. That is going to bear out. That's going to be true. Here is John Kerry's daughter, Vanessa Kerry, which Clayton just mentioned, saying this very thing at the World Economic Forum this week in Davos.
We are losing progress against our sustainable development goals. We have put billions of dollars towards those goals, and we're truly losing progress. We're now about to see the statistics of the deaths that we're seeing by 2050 is more than double what the statistics used to be. With all due respect to this WEF report, which is fantastic, we're still catching up on the data, which is the point that Cheryl is making about the urgency of getting that evidence so we can understand the problem that we are truly up against.
Now, doesn't that sound like a cart before the horse to you? Like, we're trying to find the data to sell this to you as an emergency.
We're so panicked about it. We don't have the data yet, but we are panicked. And frankly, we're catching up. But we don't have the data yet to support the fact that we're being panicked.
Right. Things are doubling. I'm just going to use that doubling word.
But there's no data to support what you're saying. She says like the statistics, now 50% higher than the older statistics we had. But we don't have the data. We don't have the statistics. What the hell are you talking about?
Now, the data does show a warming period, again, without any evidence that humans have caused it. But aren't we naive to think that climate should stay any one way for maximum comfort? Judith Curry calls this the Goldilocks paradox. We should not expect that we could just keep the Earth just right by our standards. Here's what she says about that the climate scientists have implicitly adopted the premise that our climate was just right prior to human interference, measuring dangerous warming as the temperature changed since pre-industrial times. Pre-industrial is generally regarded as prior to 1750 and the start of the Industrial Revolution. So which climate do we want? As long as we're choosing the Goldilocks bed, few would choose the pre-industrial climate of the 18th century, which occurred during the Little Ice Age and was one of the coldest centuries of the last millennium. So, just right for who, right?
Well, that's what Dr. Willie Soon pointed out in that. I would encourage all of you to watch that full interview on Tucker Carlson. It's one of the most eye-opening interviews I've ever seen. And he says they have pick an arbitrary number of what will be like the most comfortable temperature for us to live. He said, you go to the Sahara, you're in triple digits on a regular basis. You go to Siberia, you're in negative temperatures. Where is this like 1 degree variation, 2 degree variation that would make it so that everyone's living comfortably? Who's picking this number, and from what time period are you picking it?
And if we're manipulating, who gets a vote, right? Should people in Siberia say, yeah, I'd like it a little warmer? Or people in Africa say, well, I'd like it a little cooler.
We'd like a little cooler here, but I know you got all that snow up there.
Right.
So can we tilt the earth a certain way so that we're all happy?
So who are we trying to please? Now, you may ask, well, what does it hurt to just aim for a little more sustainability? Here's what Judith Curry says about that. When you prioritize sustainability over resilience, it means that you can no longer adapt. Advocates of adaptation to climate change are not arguing for simply responding to events and changes. They're arguing for anticipatory adaptation. And then we're not able to actually be resilient. She points out that Superstorm Sandy hit New York City hardest in the location where it was most recently redeveloped, which was Lower Manhattan, which should have been the least vulnerable part of the island. Why? Because it was rebuilt to be sustainable, not resilient, according to urban planners in the region. As a result, New York City demonstrated its fragility in the face of flooding and disruptions to the electricity grid. So what she's saying is that we should focus on just being adaptable to climate variability, not sustainability first. Now, we see this now in extremely cold places just this week where Teslas are bricked because the batteries can't charge in the cold.
Pierre Poilievre up in Canada with this massive cold snap, he was standing there speaking with supporters, and he's, all the truckers would have been totally out of luck because all these trucks wouldn't have been running if Trudeau gets his way running on electric trucks.
Right.
They would not work. They would not be functioning.
Yeah. So you wouldn't get your deliveries of food, basically. Cold is dangerous. Data shows that it causes 7 times more deaths than heat. We cannot lose our head because climate alarmists want us to ignore the needs of the most vulnerable who will freeze or die. If we experiment with their green initiatives, it must be humans first and then adaptation, but not sustainability first without the science. Judith Curry says that people who say follow the science are usually the ones who don't. They're the least studied, the ones who won't pick up a book. They'll just say, well, Anthony Fauci said this, so I follow the science because he's science. So we'll leave you with this quote from John Barry, historian and author of The Great Influenza. When you mix science and politics, you get politics. That's clearly what we've got when it comes to climate science and a complicit media that is incurious and unstudied. And to me, there's nothing worse than to be unprepared and unstudied. If they want us to trust them, they have to ask all the questions, even the ones that don't fit into their hysteria.
Yeah, there's great job. And there's a lot of unbelievable sound bites that have come out of the World Economic Forum this week on ecocide. One of my favorites was that nut job telling us that when you fish and you farm, that you are committing ecocide. Mm-hmm. That now that's why we've got to stop doing that. Great. I mean, there was a whole bunch of them, and then John Kerry being confronted about flying his private jet, his carbon footprint, coming here to lecture all of us about this. Yes, the hypocrisy was very, very thick this week. Yeah.
Well, the World Economic Forum.
If you want to,
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you.
I was just gonna say, if you want to f around and find out on a global scale, stop farming. And just watch what happens, because we are so far and gone from being hunter-gatherers that if you stop farming, if you cease agriculture, we're all done.
Yeah. Yeah, because people, well, certainly I know in the United States, they like to have their food as far removed from that process as possible. So when they go to the grocery store, you see the chicken wrapped in cellophane, right? Imagine forcing all of these people to try to do it themselves, right? We would be shit out of luck. What were you going to say?
I don't know. It's okay. I said a lot.
I really hope you enjoyed this video. You know, YouTube thinks that you'll love this next video. It's actually based on your past viewing habits. They have something crazy in their algorithm where they figure out exactly what you've watched in the past and what you would like to watch in the future. So do us a favor, click on this video, watch it, leave a comment, and let us know if you actually enjoyed it. Was YouTube correct? It'll actually help us beat mainstream media. Yeah, and YouTube might actually start recommending independent news content to other people out there. Imagine that. We're the little guys that have to compete against the CNNs and the MSNBCs of the world, and they like to hide our content. So please click this video, and we will see you next time, everyone.